Caroline Mulroney, thank you very much for joining us today. Here we are at Queen's Park. This is the building where you want to be the Premier not too long from now. The biggest criticism I hear about you, or concern from people, is you don't have experience here at Queen's Park. Justin Trudeau took a lot of flack from the Conservatives during the last election. They said he wasn't ready, and yet he was in opposition for a couple of years and an MP for some time. You don't have that experience. How are you ready?
You're right, I don't have elected experience, and I've said, Kathleen Wynne has a lot of political experience, and that's what's gotten us into the mess that we're in today. I've come to this job with 20 years of private sector experience. I have the skills that we need at Queen's Park, somebody who understands how the economy works. I have a broad understanding of markets and the economy. I know what to do. So just because I haven't been elected to public office, which is true, I am a nominated candidate in this race. I took a leave of absence from my job so that I could run under the PC banner to be an MPP for York Simcoe. But I don't have the political experience, but I do have the skill, and I also have the drive and the commitment to do this.
What are some new ideas that you would bring to the table? Give me a new policy. Tell me something new that you would offer that we haven't seen here at Queen's Park under the Liberal government.
Well, what we need right now is we need a leader who can do two things, who can get to work right away on fixing the mess that we're in, but can also provide Ontarians with a vision for something to believe in, a better Ontario. We have an economy that is rapidly changing because of technology. And the jobs that we have today will be different than the jobs we have in 10 years, that our children will be looking, that they will be going for in the job market. So we need to have a real conversation and look thoughtfully at what that job market's going to look like so that we can train students today for the jobs of tomorrow. And that's something that I will do as leader and as Premier.
What would you tackle first? What is the biggest issue facing this province right now that you would tackle first?
The biggest issue, and I've heard it in my riding now for months, and I've heard it across the province as I've been meeting members, is affordability. People feel like their cost of living is going up, that they're working harder and taking home less. So the first thing to tackle is affordability, and that means lowering hydro rates. It means putting more money back into people's pockets by lowering their taxes. It means by making sure that government gets out of their way so that they can make business decisions that they need to and grow their businesses and create jobs the way they want to. So affordability across the province, housing as well, that is another issue in affordability. So that is the number one thing.
What about healthcare? We're seeing overcrowded hospitals. We're seeing people that have nowhere to go. There's no long-term health care. 33,000 people are on a wait list for long-term care right now. How would you tackle that quickly?
That is a big issue. People spend more time on the wait list than they do in homes. And so it is a big issue as our population is aging and that demographic is getting bigger. It's something that we need to focus on right away. And you're right, hallway medicine, wait times in emergency rooms, it's gotten out of control. We need to focus on making sure that we are spending our healthcare dollars in the ways that we need to. Not on administration, but on the front line. And the problem that we've had in Ontario for years is we've been growing our administrative budgets and not enough on our front line. I'm going to invest in mental health. This is also an issue that has been facing families, people in Ontario, and it affects families across this province. We need to invest in mental health. That will also take pressure off emergency rooms and lower wait times.
How much more would you invest in mental health? Because the budget does not meet the number of patients that need treatment in mental health right now. It's out of proportion.
I will invest $1.9 billion and match the federal granting that we've heard about.
Okay, what about other areas that you see concern you right now? What are some other key areas that you would tackle?
Look, the number one thing we have to focus on is affordability, and hydro is a big mess that is going to require a lot of fixing that we are going to need to look at. Trying to lower people's hydro rates in the short term, but also fixing the mess in the long term, looking at some of the structural issues that have been created so that we can ensure that we're focusing on affordability in the long term. And it affects families and it affects businesses. It affects our future prosperity. So that's something that day one I will focus on and I will get to work on.
It's a file that's been bungled by many governments over many years. Would you continue to sell it off?
this is why we need somebody with a completely different approach. We need to go in and look at what has happened, what the implications of all these contracts are, what their costs are, what their real costs are. Until I get there, I won't get to look at all these contracts, understand what the real costs are, but we need to undo a lot of the damage that has been done. Because as I said, it's structural. It's going to be affecting this generation, possibly next, unless we take a critical look at what's been done and offer new ways of thinking about how to fix it.
I look at you and I have to ask to myself, you grew up in the spotlight. You grew up with a father who was Prime Minister. You've seen the pros and the cons of what it is like to be in a political life. What is drawing you to it? Because, I mean, you must have experienced and seen a lot of things with the media, with repercussions from constituents. Why do you want to do this?
I did grow up in a political family. I was 19 when my dad left office. So from the time I was 9 until I was 19, he was in public office. So I did see some of the challenges that are associated with it, but I also came to admire people who got involved in politics. People like my parents, but also our friends, people who worked in Ottawa, who worked at the party, people who made sacrifices to fight hard for what they believed in. And so I grew up watching people with that kind of passion for their country. And so I think, you know, if you grow up with a father or a mother who's a doctor, you talk about medicine at the table. I talked about politics and about policy. And so for me, it was something that I always enjoyed. And I admired the people who did it. So it's not that big a leap for me to do that.
But you've seen the tough side firsthand as well. And what was that like growing up, watching your father? I'm sure he must have shared some bad experiences and, you know, some frustrating experiences with you as well.
Well, what I learned from my dad is that if you have a vision for what you think is right, you have to fight for it. And no matter what you do, you might not always be able to please everybody, but you have to believe in the policy that you're implementing. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to fight hard. I grew up in politics in the 80s. It's a different time than it is today, but
some would argue it's a tougher time with social media.
And some would. But social media also allows you to get your message out to a broader group of people. So there are pluses and minuses, but you've got to. I'm in this focusing on what's right. I announced last year I wanted to be part of the team that defeated Kathleen Wynne. That's still the case. I want to work hard and put good ideas to work that work for Ontarians.
So when you were, 17, 18, you were the subject of the Frank magazine campaign, satirical campaign, Let's Deflower Caroline Mulroney. How did that impact you?
That magazine wasn't really much of a magazine. Reporters did not have to sign their names, so it wasn't something that we ever really took seriously.
But that can't have been easy at that age.
It was not. It was, I was in high school. It was it was disgusting at the time, and it still is. I have to believe that today it wouldn't happen again. You know, and that is the thing. People are asking me, it's come back now years later. I have to believe that it wouldn't come up again, and that people wouldn't tolerate that kind of messaging. It was unacceptable. I have a younger brother. My mother, he was born when my dad was in office. That summer, my mother wanted to spend more time with my brother, and my dad travels a lot, and I wanted to spend time with him. So this was a great summer, and people thought they'd have a little fun with it, and it was unacceptable.
How did that shape you, though, at the time, into the person you are today?
You know, you have to proceed. You have to do what you think is right, and that didn't impact me. It showed me how difficult and how tough the media can be sometimes. But I don't actually want to refer to them as the media, because they didn't have to sign their names, and so I don't think they represent what the media actually stands for. So for me, at that time, my father was was fighting a lot. He'd fought the '88 election on free trade, brought in the GST. So he brought in some measures that were not popular, but he did them because he thought they were right. So I was in that already, and this was just another example of some negativity that we had to deal with. It's unacceptable. I would not ever want that to happen to any other woman, any other girl. And if I'm elected, these are the kinds of things that I will stand for, make sure that they do not occur. But I also don't want to say that that was representative of the media, because I don't think that they stood really with the media at the time.
What do you think of the Me Too campaign right now? Do you think that it's going too far, and we'll talk about Patrick Brown in a moment, but there's this automatic believe the victim hashtag. Do you believe that we should automatically believe every woman who comes forward?
I believe that every woman should be encouraged to come forward if they have a complaint, and that those complaints and allegations need to be taken seriously. I think that we need to have the process in place where all the allegations can be evaluated and people feel like they can come forward. I think we need to go case by case, and that's what we should be able to expect as people coming forward with any kinds of complaints of wrongdoing.
Getting back to just the last question on the Frank magazine, how would you protect your own children and shelter them today?
They're still young, so they, I think social media is a place that we're all learning. It changes very quickly, and as a parent, I don't know that I'm always up to speed on some of the things that I should be, but I'm working hard to make sure that I am. I don't want to expose them too much to that side of it. We've had a great time campaigning together. They love door knocking. Just like the way I was exposed to politics, I think I learned a lot and I enjoyed it, and I got to spend more time with my parents as a result. I hope that's what I want. That's the side of politics that I want to expose them to, and they've already had that. I mean, our campaign office is filled with young volunteers who are really passionate about this province. My kids get dropped off after school, they come in on the weekends, they do their homework alongside a lot of these volunteers, so they see what's great about it. And so I want to be able to give them that exposure to politics. At the same time, I'll be working every day to make sure they're protected just as I would in any way.
Let's talk about Patrick Brown. He is the leader that brought you in as a star candidate, and now, even today, you held a news conference asking for him to step aside and asking the other leadership candidates to join you in that. There's some real irony here. He needs to step aside and clear his name outside of this leadership race. I think that's clear. Do you think he's been given a fair shake, though? I mean, he was basically turfed out on allegations that have still yet to be proven.
I think that over the last few days, there's a lot of allegations that have come forward that he needs to address. And what I've said is that he needs to do that outside of this leadership race. We have 6 weeks to pick a new leader who can finally defeat Kathleen Wynne. Our party, the last time the PC party won an election was 19 years ago. It's been a generation that we've let the Liberals wreak havoc on this province. So we have an important opportunity, a critical opportunity, once in a generation now, after a whole generation. We need a leader who can defeat Kathleen Wynne. We need to focus on this race. The candidates need to be able to talk about the issues that members want to talk about. We need to get out across this province, get to as many ridings as we can, and talk about the issues that members want to talk about. Patrick Brown needs to clear his name, but he needs to do that outside of the leadership race.
A lot of people are saying that what has happened to him is an inside job, and certainly since all of this has erupted, we are seeing backstabbing. People are calling it a civil war. I'm almost calling it cannibalism because people are just going at it, and you see the division and the different rifts within the party. It is not easy to have so many different opinions in one party, and an extreme difference of opinions. Where would you stand within that party, and how would you unite them? Because as we've seen from him, it's not easy, and they can bring you down.
That's why you need to have the right leader. Our party stands for freedom.
Are you saying he was a bad leader?
What I'm saying is that going forward, we need to have the right leader who can unite the party. We have lots of labels in our party: social conservatives, progressives, libertarians. There are all sorts of labels. Mm-hmm. What matters is that we come together around what we need to do. Our common goal here is to defeat Kathleen Wynne. We are the right people to manage this province. We need to get it back on track. We have seen the budget double, we've seen our debt double, we pay $12 billion a year in interest expense. The Ontario taxpayer only pays more for healthcare and education, which means we're not spending the dollars we need in the areas that we need, as we're talking about. So we need a leader who can unite all of us and bring us together around that common goal. But that's what part of being a conservative is. My father ran and he won a majority with 211 members. There are a lot of diverse views. Mm-hmm. What matters is that each member feels respected, that their voice matters. We come around the table, we talk about what our goals are, what we want to accomplish, and the best way we can all agree to getting that done. That's why we need somebody new, who hasn't been in the party a long time, who got into this to be a candidate because she believed that we needed to fight Kathleen Wynne and defeat her, who's got the commitment and the energy and a new approach to this.
Do you have faith that your party will pick the right leader? Because many would argue that the Conservatives, the Ontario Conservatives, have done a very bad job over the last 14 years or so picking the right leader.
I can only speak to what I'm doing. I have experienced a tremendous amount of support, and there's great momentum around my campaign. I was in the North for a couple of days, and the turnout at all my different events was tremendous, and it keeps growing. So I'm very excited about that. All I can do is continue to work as hard as I'm doing, trying to get my message out as much as I can and meet as many members as I can. I can't control anything else, but I'm very confident that I will win on March 10th.
How much of an influence will your father have if you become Premier? Some people are saying actually Brian Mulroney would be the Premier of Ontario, not Caroline, that he would be the puppet master.
I think he wouldn't want to hear that because he's trying to retire a little bit and slow down and spend more time with my mother after many years of working very hard. Look, I talk to both of my parents on a regular basis, just like a lot of people are in constant contact with their parents. My father spent a lifetime in politics. He knows a lot about it, but he's done what he wanted to do for Canada. This is my campaign. These are my ideas. And
do you ever disagree with him politically?
When we talk a lot about other things. We talk about kids and hockey, and we talk about family issues. So we don't have big political debates. But he lives in Montreal and spends a lot of time on the road. So we get along very well. But we don't have a lot of time to debate. But I speak to both of my parents, and we'll continue to do that.
Doug Ford. I'm going to talk about carbon tax now for a moment. It seems like Doug Ford set the agenda on the carbon tax. Did you have to fall in line to appease the party on that one?
Well, the leadership race happened it was very sudden, as I'm sure it was for you. It was sudden for me and all the candidates in the race and the people in the party. When I announced my candidacy, I was clear that I was against new taxes. And so I set my own agenda. I set the plan for my own campaign, which is what I've continued to do. I said early on I was against new taxes, that the carbon tax did not sit well with me, that I would talk with members, but it was clear early on that I was against new taxes.
So you would introduce no new taxes, and yet the carbon tax would be dead, which is $4 billion lost.
I've said early on that I would not, if I'm elected Premier, I will not impose the carbon tax.
So how are you going to find that $4 billion? I know it's $1 billion a year, but where are you going to find that money?
Well, the Auditor General looked at 14 programs out of over 100 and found $1 billion of waste just there, and that was recently. So I don't think there's anyone in this province who doesn't think that the Liberals have been wasting our money for the past 15 years. Look, it is something we've got to focus on. We need to look very carefully at it, but I am confident that we will be able to find savings.
Were you hoping to be an MPP here for a few years first before becoming leader, or trying to become leader?
I was hoping to become an MPP here, that's for sure. But I am ready to lead this party, and I'm ready to lead this province.
All right, Caroline Mulroney, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you.